old age of 70. Whoa, okay. Not at the ripe old age of 75, but when I was in my late 40s, and we just come to Utah from Los Angeles, things weren't as fast paced as they are now. The 2 temples, a radio station, Festival Colors. So my Bobby went back to painting, and I started running. And I remember one time I was at Brigham Young University at the track, and I'm 45 years old, and we were doing speed work on the track, timing intervals, quarter mile, half a mile, 220s. And there were some men there in their 70s, early 70s. And I said, why at your age are you coming out to increase your speed? You know, isn't that something for us younger guys? And I'll never forget what the one fellow said. He said, there's a constant desire to improve. It doesn't matter how old you are. You'll never get out from under the desire to improve. It's universal, it's basic. I remember, I can't think of his name. He's the most famous cellist. Maybe some of you will know his name. You know, throughout the whole of his adult life, he was universally acknowledged as the world's famous cellist. In fact, perhaps the most famous and adept cellist who ever lived. But he practiced 4 hours a day, even when he was in the 80s. Someone said, you've accomplished every award, every authority acknowledges you as the greatest cellist who ever lived. Why do you still practice for 4 hours a day when you're in your 80s? And he said, I think I'm getting better. So our topic today is a desire to improve. Every one of us has a desire to improve. And why do we all have it? It's because Krishna made us that way. Krishna wired us that way, put it in our heart. He loves us too much for us to get stuck, to stagnate and sour someplace. We are created to be constantly moving ahead, rising to new levels and taking new ground. And as we live our lives and do this journey from birth to death, Krishna is going to reveal newer and newer ways to improve. He's going to speak to us from within our heart. He's going to speak to us from scripture. He's going to speak to us through the voices of those people who love us. Krishna is in our heart. He knows the things that are holding us back. He knows our weaknesses. He knows our faults, and he knows our inner secrets, even those things that we hide from everyone else. Now, when he brings these matters to our attention, we have to do our role and be willing to take the corrective measures. If you're not willing to follow the instructions and guidance of the Lord, that you insisted on keeping inside your comfort zone, you're going to gather dust. You're going to get old and stodgy and sour and critical and judgmental in your marriage, in your finances, in your careers, and your walk with God is going to get stale. If you take the advice of Scripture casually, you ignore that small voice of the Paramatma speaking to you from deep within your heart, or you downplay advice from well-wishers or devotee peers, you're never going to become everything that Krishna and God created you to be. Sometimes we think, I know I should forgive that person, but they hurt me so badly. Or we think, I know I need to get into shape, but I just don't have the time. I know I need to quit working so much and spend more time at the temple and with my family, but I really need the extra money. I know I should have got out of bed earlier and chant my rounds, but I'm too addicted to late night TV. I know I should go to the temple on Sundays, but I'm so tired after working all week long. In those areas, it is critically important to heed Krishna's promptings for your improvement. Krishna doesn't tell us anything that's not for our own good. Yataraga Vishamera Pariname, Tatsukamarjam, Admabudi Prashadajam. It may be like poison in the beginning to get up early or to let your spouse have the last word. Set a better example for your children. But in the end, it's going to get you closer to the presence. It's going to get you inside the shelter and protection of the Supreme Personality of God. Poison in the beginning, but nectar in the end. On the other hand, being comfortable, being safe, settling where you are, seems like it would be nectar, but only for a certain period of time. You're made to be in movement. You're made to be growing and to maturing. And if you don't do that, you might as well be drinking poison. Vishaya. Krishna only wants your obedience. He only wants you to heed his instructions so that you can become a better version of yourself. And then he can trust you to leverage more of his favor on your shoulders. So our question tonight is, are there things in your life that you really should be dealing with, but you've been procrastinating? You've been putting them off. Maybe you're ignoring hints about getting your finances in order. Maybe it's that you should be arguing less with your wife. Maybe you should be making peace, burying the hatchet with that coworker. Maybe you should cut down on the sweets, lose some weight. Maybe during the morning commute, you need to listen to talks and lectures, Krishna consciousness, instead of Rush Limbaugh, talk show host. And maybe your being here together with me on this particular evening is another way of Krishna's asking you not to put off those changes any longer, to start paying attention to what he's whispering to you. Anytime that you obey the Lord, blessing is going to follow. Sowing a seed which will grow and cause you to rise higher and higher. Anytime you sow a seed, it's not going to sprout and grow and produce fruits overnight. It's going to take some time, but you can be confident that when you're moving forward, sowing the right seeds, being good to people, even when people aren't being good to you, at some point, in some way, your season will come and you're going to see God's goodness in your life to a greater degree. And my question to you tonight is, how high do you want to rise? Do you want to continue to increase? Do you want to see more of Krishna's blessings? If so, the higher you go, the more disciplined in your life you're going to have to be. The higher you go, the more willing you're going to have to be to follow what Krishna is saying to you. One thing that Krishna might be saying to some of us is not to spend so much time with those friends who are taking intoxicants, cutting corners on honesty, talking about others behind their backs. You may be putting that off. Oh, true, I've known them since high school. I even knew them in India before I emigrated to America. True, if I don't have those friends, I'll be lonely. And true, what's the big deal? They're good people. Their bad conduct doesn't affect me, doesn't hurt me one bit. Can I tell you that you're playing with fire? We had a devotee managing the Salt Lake City temple. Now he's up in Boise. So we had one fellow who came to the temple occasionally and did some services and all. And the fellow once asked to borrow the temple vehicle. So Rishabh let him borrow the temple vehicle, and the fellow was out for it for a day or so, and he came back. Then Rishabh didn't think anything of it, and he's using the temple vehicle. About a week later, he got pulled over for a damaged taillight by the police. Police happened to do a search of the car, and underneath the front seat, they had found a whole bunch of drugs. So this guy had borrowed the car from the temple and gone and bought drugs, and then he was so drugged out himself And he didn't take all the drugs with him. He left them, and Rishabh almost went to jail. So don't tell me that associating with the wrong people doesn't have its unintended consequences. And so if Krishna tells you to do something, for instance, to distance yourselves from certain associates that are not going where you're going, the sooner you do it, the better off you're going to be. We should develop this habit of reflexively, immediately following the instructions of the Lord. You put it off, you delay it, you procrastinate at your own risk. When you question the wisdom of the Lord or qualify what he's telling you to do, second guess him, minimizing his loving advice, you're doing it at your own risk. You may not want to distance yourself from those friends because you're afraid you'll be lonely. The fact is that the sooner take the advice of the Lord and start seeing less and less and less of those friends, the sooner the Lord's going to send you much better friends. The sooner you cut down on that bad habit, the sooner the Lord will enthuse you about getting back into shape. The sooner you cut out sweets, the sooner you're going to start looking good in the mirror. The sooner you bite your tongue and allow your spouse the last word in order to have peace in the family, the sooner that you'll be less harassed. And the sooner that you start daily chanting the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, according to the instructions of the spiritual master, the sooner that you're going to experience the fullness of Krishna's favor in your life. On the other hand, the longer that we delay dealing with a character issue, then it becomes more and more difficult later on. We're always a lot better following Krishna's promptings quickly. Whenever you feel a tension, an uneasiness, an alarm going off somewhere in your psyche, you need to move right away to take the proper steps. We have to be childlike in our habit of trusting him to lead us in the best direction of our life. Vedaham, samadhitani vartamani, bhavishani bhavu, mam tu veda nakashana. Krishna says, I know everything, past, present, and future. I see down the road 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Imagine someone standing on a balcony above an intersection, looking down. He sees a pedestrian and he simultaneously sees a car speeding towards the intersection. And the car doesn't see the pedestrian doesn't see the car, but from his particular vantage point, he sees that that pedestrian is going to step off the curb and get smacked. So he shouts down to you, jump to the sidewalk. You look up, you see this guy, you say, what's he all worked up about? See what I mean? But if you ignore his advice, then you're going to end up in the hospital at the very worst, at the very least. Krishna is up there. He has a vantage point. He has a perspective that we don't have. And even if we don't see the immediate reason, the immediate efficacy, we should get into the habit of following what he says. That will help us to avoid the calamities that may be in store for us later on in the life. There are some things that with our limited physical senses, we cannot perceive the danger. We don't know what's around the corner. We don't know what's going to happen a year or two years from now. But Krishna has that vantage point. Therefore, for our own betterment and for the betterment of those we love, we need to yield to his superior vantage point. He sees past, present, future. He sees around the corner, sees down the street, he sees across town, sees the things that we cannot see. Why? Because he's within the hearts of all living beings. Ishvara sarvabhutana vidishanuna brahmayan sarva yantra rudramaya. He knows what people are going to do even before they themselves know. And for those that keep in first place, chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He's got special partiality for them. Samaham Sarvabhutashu Namidvesham Manaham. I have special partiality, I have special affection for those who are my devotees. And if we're truly devotees, not just by words, but in practice, we have to typify ourselves by learning to trust him. The sooner we learn to trust him, the sooner that we'll be saved from all kinds of dangers. Prabhupada says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, a devotee who constantly engages in the service of the Lord is awarded all kinds of knowledge necessary in order to achieve the supreme. I heard a story about a park ranger in Yellowstone. He was leading a group of hikers. He was so intent on telling the hikers about the local flowers and animals that he ignored the static from his radio on his hip. He considered it was distracting and turned it off. Not too long after that, another ranger came running up the path, totally breathless. He said, "Why have you not responded to our frantic calls on the radio?" He said, "Why? Why should I have responded? What's the big deal?" The fellow says that we've spotted a grizzly bear tracking your tour group, and we've been trying to reach you to warn you of the danger. Problem is, he tuned out the message, he tuned out the warning. So how often do we tune out the messages that Krishna is sending us and consequently put at risk not only ourselves, but those around us? Do you know anybody who said with tears in their eyes, "I knew I should have kept strife out of my family. I knew I shouldn't have argued so much with my wife. I knew I should have spent more time with my kids. I knew I shouldn't have been so critical. I knew I shouldn't have been so hard to get along." And isn't it amazing how we can know the right thing to do and yet at the same time just not do it? So our hope is that's not you. That's not going to be me. Be obedient to Krishna now so that we don't have those kinds of regrets later on. Krishna may be cautioning you about your words, asking you not to say so many hurtful, sarcastic, and critical things. Somewhere or other along the line, you've developed a bad habit. You know, deep down inside, it's hurting your relationships. Don't wait for sirens to go off. Don't wait for divorce, losing the job before you do something. In most cases, Krishna's not going to come up and hit you across the side of the head with a 2x4 and say, "Hey, you're ruining your marriage. You're going to end up hurt and lonely." His advice is going to come more like a whisper from a place of peace and stillness. Krishna has equipped us to handle difficult things, planted the seeds of discipline, self-control inside of us. We have to do our part and water those seeds with his holy names in order to make them grow. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Heard a story about a young man named Danny Simpson. He was short on cash, and he took a pistol that had been handed down through generations in his family, went out with his pistol to rob a bank. He got $6,000 from the tellers, but didn't get very far away before the police apprehended him and arrested him. Now, at his trial, two significant things happened. The first thing is he was sentenced to 6 years in prison. The second thing is that it was discovered the gun he used was an antique Colt made by the Ross Rifle Company in 1918. Its value, get this, was about $100,000. Danny robbed a bank for $6,000 all the time, holding a gun in his hand worth $100,000. Now, Do you think that Danny had some regrets? Yeah, I think he probably did. If he had to do it all over again, my guess is that before running off and robbing a bank, he would have taken a closer look at that family heirloom, which was already his by right. The moral of this story is don't miss the treasures that are right at hand. We need to work on our own talents and skills and abilities that have been gifted to us by God. We need to learn to dig up the many hidden treasures that Krishna is buried within each and every one of us. He's already packed our bags for the journey of life with everything that we need. He didn't forget anything. He didn't leave anything out. He didn't make us second class. We're not less than, we're sons and daughters of the Almighty Lord. We have royal blood flowing in our veins. We're equipped, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. Now, do you know people who, instead of paying the price, discipline and self-control to go to the next level, instead of looking in their own suitcase, so to speak, and all their time and energy being jealous of people more fulfilled, more prosperous, more blessed than them, rather than being happy for those people and rejoicing, all they do is try to run them down and find fault. And the interesting thing is that fault finder could have enjoyed the same success, the same fulfillment. Problem is they're unwilling to pay the price, unwilling to make the same sort of sacrifices that had been made by the people of whom they were envious. We're going to be the men and women that God created us to be. We need to stay open. We need to stay respectful. We need to be inspired and challenged and happy for those who are further along than us. The poet said, the lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave footprints in the sands of time, footprints that a forlorn brother, shipwrecked and forlorn, seen shall take heart. I forget all the whole thing. Always be looking for ways to improve. There are treasures underneath the dirt of complacency. There are treasures underneath inertia, laziness. There are treasures underneath the jealousy. And would you agree with me that in this Kali Yuga age, it's possible to get away with a whole bunch of stuff? It's possible to treat people disrespectfully. It's possible to be sloppy in your business and financial affairs and still live comfortably. But we're talking about rising higher, being the very best that you can be. Prabhupada says in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam purport, we have got this rare and valuable human form of life. We should utilize it to rise to the highest standard of perfection. And he says that is Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. One of the most fascinating people in our history was a gentleman from the South. He was born as a son of slaves. He could have said, boo-hoo, poor me, settled where he was, wallowed in self-pity, come up with any number of excuses why things were too much stacked against his favor. But he never allowed his thoughts or his actions to be enslaved. He went to college, and he always carried with him a deep belief that God had something special in store for him. This gentleman, George Washington Carver, eventually became a chemist, and he specialized in agricultural products. His work helped the South move from a dependence on one single crop of cotton to include diversified products like sweet potatoes and peanuts. George Washington Carver called his laboratory God's little workshop. And in that workshop, he would often be overheard to be carrying on conversations with the Lord. The story goes that one day, George was working in God's little workshop and he said, "Lord, tell me the purpose of the universe." God replied, "That's too big a question for your little mind. Reduce the scope of your question." Carver then said, "All right, God, tell me the purpose of mankind." God said, "Still reduce the scope of your question." Then Carver is said to have said to God, "Lord, tell me about the peanut." God replied, "Right on. Now we're talking." George Washington Carver gave his talent to discovering more than 100 products and uses for the peanut. His discoveries helped to reshape and re-energize the whole weakened economy of the South and helped millions and millions of people. Everyone benefited from his God-shaped attitude about life and his willingness to follow God in order to mold his mind and thoughts from a spiritual perspective. One of the greatest lessons that you can learn in life, one of the greatest principles that you can ever learn is follow peace. Follow peace. Listen to your consciousness. Deal with the issues that Krishna brings to light. Don't put them off. Realizing that the longer you put them off, the more difficult it will be in the end. How many people wonder why they're not happy? Why they're not blessed? Why they can't sleep well at night? I'll tell you, because their consciousness is not clear. They have not fulfilled their destiny. They have not walked the path that God wanted them to walk. You cannot push down your higher self and expect to enjoy Krishna's best in your life. When we refuse to accept his calling on our lives, we step outside of his protection and favor. We end up living with a guilty consciousness, knowing that we could have been much better versions of ourselves. We could have felt a lot better of ourselves. And because we're frustrated and feeling guilty, we have these midlife crises where we begin to get grouchy and all out of sorts. We start blaming others, we blame our situations, we blame our circumstances, and we live defeated, weak, mediocre lives. And that's because of the poison that we've allowed on the inside. At any time, if you choose to change, Krishna's right there, standing right there, willing to help you. Tesham evanu kampartam aganatamaha nishyami abra. Jnana deepana bashvada. Willing to turn up the light, turn up the flame. He can put you back on the best path of your life, but you have to ask him. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Govinda, son of Nanda, though you're the one, second to none, my shining sun, I'm heartbroken in this ocean of birth and death. It's not worth the commotion. Pull me out of this cruel blender, surrendered as an atom in the sweet splendor of your tender lotus feet. If you ask him, Krishna will guide you in your own individual way. Everybody's at different levels. We shouldn't waste our time being envious of or comparing ourselves to others. Too often, when we do that, we tend to make excuses. We say, well, my friends are all going to this movie. Everybody's going. What harm can it do? But a little alarm is going off inside. A voice is saying, you're better than that. Don't take dirt willingly into your mind. You have to feel good about what's in your heart. Maybe your friends are not right now at your level. Maybe they're not listening to God's advice like they should. If you want to go a different path and heed the advice of the Lord and qualify for his favor, it's true. You may spend a few lonely nights, but remember that anytime Krishna asks you to exercise a little more discipline, anytime he asks you to sacrifice something for his sake, it is for your benefit. It is so that he can ultimately release more favor into your life and the lives of those that you love. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In one lecture, Prabhupada talks about the steps on the path to self-improvement. Quote, by yogic powers, one can control others, one can travel in an astral form anywhere within the universe, one can obtain anything from any place in the universe, one can choose his own time and place of death and rebirth wherever he may desire. But when one rises to the level of receiving and taking and acting on instructions from the Lord, that is the highest perfection of life, not to be compared with any of the mentioned yogic powers. The good news is that whenever Krishna dictates something to us, he always gives us the grace and the ability to do it. Prabhupada's guru Bhaktisiddhanta asked him in 1926 to spread Krishna consciousness in the Western countries. Prabhupada was unable to go to the West until 1965, 40 years later. At that time, he no longer had youth, nor did he have good health, nor did he have wealth, nor did he have connections. What power was it that empowered Prabhupada to achieve success in this great mission? He achieved success by grace. By grace, he persevered against all odds. By grace, he attracted 5,000 young disciples. By grace, he established 108 temples. By grace, he translated and printed 50 big books. By grace, he circled the earth 13 times. We're all gathered here together this evening by the grace of God. And if we're honest, we'll admit that even though we haven't particularly trusted him, that even though we pushed him far down from first place on our list of priorities, he has still abundantly blessed us. Even though we haven't particularly cared for his instructions to date, he's shown his goodness in 1,000 different ways. Now, knowing that, would it not make the most perfect sense to try to improve, to dial him in better? Would it not make the most perfect sense to hunger to hear his voice above the chatter, to thirst for his voice as a thirsty man in the desert? Wouldn't it make perfect sense to call out day and night for his grace fully in our lives? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You can always get through to him. You're the apple of his eye. Krishna's guidance is always there, standing by, never takes a coffee break. He never has a lapse of attention. He never stops wanting to bless us. We just have to do our part and invite him in. We have to be willing to declare, yes, this is for me. I want supernatural strength. Yes, I want to overcome all obstacles. I want to defeat all enemies. I want for me and my loved ones to rise higher and higher. I want to take my obedience to a higher level. I want me and my loved ones to experience an unprecedented level of favor. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Friends, Krishna has great things in store for you. Don't get stuck in a rut, settle for mediocrity. Pay attention to the small, still voice on the inside. Deal immediately with the issues that Krishna brings to light. Learn to obey quickly. And how high you're going to go in life is directly related to how you follow Krishna's instructions. He's preparing you for great things. He wants to take you further than you thought possible. So don't be surprised when he asks you to pick up your bags. He's already packed them with everything you need. He wants to take you to places that you could never go on your own. This life, next life, back to home, back to God. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So that's our presentation this evening on the desire for self-improvement. Any questions or comments?
Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's a wonderful session. It was really, every statement was really like, so deeper to sink for us. Like, how you pointed out many things, that how we have to focus, like not to focus on procrastination, like, procrastination itself is our own risk if you want to do that, like, and Krishna, like, says that you sacrifice for me, and ultimately, like, it'll definitely be benefiting for us if you understand, right? So thank you for that wonderful talk. Before question answer, like, anybody can raise a hand also. They can chat if it's uncomfortable to speak. So I would like to share my screen first. So as we know, we have every Sunday programs we have. This Sunday we have His Grace Navinendra Prabhu will be speaking on Sankirtan topic. And next week, Wednesday Sangha, we have His Grace Arjun Chakha Prabhu who will be speaking on the pitfall of Vaishnava Aparadha. Very deep topic, again, very important topic for everybody. And every morning we have chanting, Hare Krishna mantra chanting. Devotees can join and participate between 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Every day. So you can join anytime and drop anytime. So if you want to use some of the time, morning time in chanting, definitely you can join that. And we have weekly Bhakti Vriksha programs. So you can definitely join on those programs. And also every Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. to 12:15 p.m. We have Bhagavad Gita reading. So the devotees can get benefits out of this. And please, you can definitely visit our website to get all our updates. Please do. So any questions? Devotees again. Rashi Mataji, please go ahead. Rashi Mataji. So I think so. Prabhu, I would just want to go that question. So definitely we have that desire, right? But the disease is procrastination. That always comes. How to overcome that procrastination? Like, we know that I need to do this certain things, but how can I like, go ahead and like, go out of this procrastination disease?
Anytime you're going to go higher, there's going to be a little price to pay. The point is, do you trust Krishna to reward you for paying the price? A small thing. A lot of devotees even will, they'll walk past a piece of trash. They won't see it. They'll think, well, somebody else put it there. It's got nothing to do with me. I don't want to take the time to lean down, pick it up, put it in the receptacle. It's troublesome to stop what you're doing. It's troublesome to even see the trash in the first place. How many people in India, we all know that they don't even see the trash that's there. It just got blinders on. But if you know that when you go the extra mile, you do something extra to please Krishna, you don't want trash littering the temple grounds or even in your home. Your home is also a temple. You're a devotee. Your neighbors are looking at you, seeing how you keep the lawn, how you keep the driveway, how you keep your car. When you take care, pay attention to the details and live your life of excellence, never minding how much inconvenience it may take in order to do that, Krishna is going to reward you. He's going to reward you. You do a small thing for Krishna, Krishna is going to do 100 times for you. I'm convinced that 2 temples in Utah, radio station, big festivals, money in the bank, all this blessings that we're enjoying in Utah is because we just don't mind doing the little things for Krishna. Every time I pick up a piece of trash, I think, okay, there's another successful festival of colors in the future. There's another temple that we can build somewhere down the line in Ogden. The thing is, we have to take the limits off of God. You have to take the limits off of God. If you have a prompting, if Krishna is telling you to do something, and it may not be to go halfway across the world and start a spiritual revolution like Prabhupada's guru told him. It may be something simple, stop arguing with your wife. Get away from those friends that are dragging you down. Be moderate in your taking of prasadam. Any number of ways that most people, they don't need me to tell them how they can improve because they already got Krishna. They're already telling themselves, they're already aware of what Krishna is telling them to do. Like you said, the problem is we're putting it off. We're putting it off. Someone says, well, why do today what you can do tomorrow? What we're talking about is why do tomorrow what you can do today. Don't we want those blessings? Don't we want that favor? Don't we want all obstacles removed, enemies defeated? So when you can plant the seed today, that will bring all that to pass. Why would you delay? And the opportunity is there today. Maybe the opportunity won't be there tomorrow. Every businessman knows that. There's a time to throw in your money. There's a time. There's a window. If you don't take advantage of it, that window is going to close. So you keep putting things off, putting things off, putting things off. Maybe you don't want to take care of your health. Maybe you don't want to eat properly. You think, well, tomorrow, and then you end up with triple bypass surgery, and then it's too late. You should have done it when you first got the message to do it. Like we say, one of the biggest inspirations not to put things off is you're risking so much. You see what I'm saying? And one of the reasons to do it right away is that you're going to reap unthinkable, unimaginable benefits from heeding the advice of the Lord from within your heart. And no one can say that I don't hear it. Every time we've done something bad, every time we've making a wrong turn in the road, we're making a wrong decision, we can look back and remember Krishna asked us not to do it, but we overrode him. We wanted it so badly. We were so determined. We were willing to tune out the voice of the Lord in order to listen to our own mind and our own senses.
So somebody has asked as a question connected to that, like how do we know when to listen to the little voice inside us, or when to listen to Krishna's whisper? How do we know Krishna is whispering to us?
How do we know Krishna is listening to us? Is that what your question is?
The question was in the chat. It says, we know when to listen the little voice inside us, right? You know, when to listen to Krishna's whisper. Like it's our voice or Krishna's voice. Like how do we know that is Krishna is saying?
It says, be careful about your mind and your senses and your emotions. Your mind, your senses, and your emotions, they'll tell you certain things, but they'll be loud and they'll be raucous and they'll be crude. But you'll know that Krishna is speaking to you when it's coming from a place of peace. There's a tonality about Krishna's messages that you can recognize. It's good for you now, it's good for you in the past, good for you in the future. You don't really get confused in that area. You know, Krishna is giving you that advice by which things will go easier, blessings will flow upon you. Things that you try to accomplish with God in the middle, he'll remove the obstacles, he'll catapult you forward. He'll crown you with success. The urgings of the senses and the emotions and the minds are more like for immediacy. Our senses and our emotions and our mind are not all that dissimilar from the senses and emotions and minds of the animals. If you're being told, if you're hearing a voice that says, indulge, it doesn't matter who you hang out with, go ahead and argue with your wife because she's wrong and you're right and women should be submissive to men. You know, you should be able to recognize this as the urgings of the mind, the senses, and the emotions. You're not going to go higher until you learn to subdue. Evam buddhi parambhava samsajat jahishatar mahabaho yam dharate jagat. Krishna says one must subdue the lower self with the higher self. So the lower self wants sense gratification, it wants adoration, wants name and fame, it wants to indulge and to cater to the whims of the senses, it wants immediacy. Whereas what Krishna is asking you to do is plan for the long haul. Plant the seeds now. You may not experience the sweetness of the seeds that you plant now for quite some time. But Krishna promised you, Krishna assures you, they will come and they will be so much better than you could ever imagine.
Thank you, Prabhu. Rashi Mataji, please go ahead and ask the question.
Actually, I had the same question, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for the enlightening messages you are giving us, as always. Thank you so much. I had the same question, actually, how to identify the mind chatter and the Krishna's voice, but you explained this. So now, is there any way we can increase this wisdom to hear that inner subtle voice more
Hare
precise?
Krishna, 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 Hari Hari, Hari Ram, Hari Ram. What you're doing is you're dialing in Krishna, and you're dialing out the urgings of the senses, the mind, and the emotions. Every time you chant with attention, you're accomplishing exactly what you're asking about. That's what the chanting is for. It's so that we always be on Krishna's frequency. We'll never get off the track from listening to Maya.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
So somebody has a question in the chat saying that how to come out of the midlife crisis. We are stuck in it and can't come out. It's miserable feeling helpless.
It's a little muffled, your voice. How to come out of what crisis?
Midlife crisis.
Oh, someone reaches middle age and he feels deep anxiety. He lashes out at his wife and children. He's just hard to get along with. And then he thinks, why am I feeling this way? I didn't do anything really bad. I did my duty as a husband in my career. There isn't any big sin that I can point to that accounts for my despair in middle age. And that all may be true. In fact, it probably is true in most cases. But the sin is that you've got all these gifts, you've got all this talent from God, and God's standing by, ready to help you. He's encouraging you. And you didn't act on it. You put it off. You put it off. You put it off. You put it off. So it's not necessarily the sin of commission, which precipitates the midlife crisis. It's a sin of omission. You didn't become the person that God wanted you to be. And that is certainly a cause for regret. That where God could have taken you or what God could have empowered you to accomplish could have changed the world, changed at least your family. But you didn't care for it. You didn't rise to the occasion. You wanted to stay hunkered down in your little cocoon. The good news is that Krishna's always there. He didn't go away when you're 35. He didn't go away when you're 40. He didn't go away when you're 50. He's not going to go away when you're 60. He's still there. The offer's still on the table. Yudhisthira, he went into the forest for 13 years. That's a long time. You could lose your skills. You could lose your sharpness. You're on the shelf, basically. Duryodhana was in the palace, making alliances, practicing diplomacy, learning all kinds of skills. He was right in the middle of everything, and Yudhisthira sitting on a log somewhere in the middle of the forest. And you might have thought that Yudhisthira's destiny, that what Krishna wanted for Yudhisthira was passing him by. Krishna might think, well, Yudhisthira's out of the game now. He's injured. He's on the sidelines. Let me pick somebody else. But it wasn't that way. It was just the opposite. That even though Yudhisthira was in one sense out of the game, he kept his faith, kept chanting, kept being good to people. He kept believing in the Lord, and he passed the tests. So that when he came back into the game, you might say, even though he hadn't been developing his skills, he hadn't been exercising, he hadn't been sharpening his skills, he hadn't done anything this Duryodhana did, but one thing he did do was he stayed. He had the kripaya tava para pankacha. He had the mercy because he never let go of the lotus feet of the Lord. And no matter how much Duryodhana had, how much he developed his skills, or how many allies he had, or how much money he had, or how many warriors he had, on the one side, the kripaya tava para pankaja that Yudhisthira had trumped all of that. Yudhisthira not only came out of his 13 years of exile, not only did not miss his destiny, but because of the mercy of the Lord, he defeated all of his enemies, and he got back twice what he had lost before. So there's good reason to feel anxiety if one reaches middle age and hasn't pursued the dreams that God put in his heart. But there's also every reason to hope. that you're never too old, you're never too disabled, you're never too peripheral for Krishna not only to get you back in the game, but to defeat those who betrayed you, to overturn the tables. Krishna can elevate you, he can promote you, he can glorify you in the presence of your enemies. That means not only he'll restore you, but he'll restore you right in front of the people that tried to destroy you. So they're gnashing their teeth.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. That was very deep thought. It's really never too late to start, right? And we have to really, really thankful for this deep, wisdom and experience you're sharing here. So, anybody else has any questions? Before that, Rahul Prabhu, are you there?
Yes, Prabhuji, I'm here.
So, if you don't mind, Prabhu, Rahul Prabhu is in Vrindavan, ISKCON Vrindavan. We want to give darshan to all of us. ISKCON Vrindavan.
Can you guys see my?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. I'm in the ISKCON Vrindavan right now. Right, so temple just opened, but party is going on right now. It's a different atmosphere, so you will feel a calmness and quietness when I'm talking, right? So these people are just, it's a different, it's morning, you know.
There's Srila Prabhupada Samadhi.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Also, we can go to details.
I think right now I cannot go inside. There are a lot of people, right? So I'm just gonna go around. I'll probably come back.
Yeah, the network is not that great.
You guys can see Prabhu, right?
I think the bandwidth is very low, Prabhu. It's very difficult to see.
Okay, let me see. I can go outside. You guys can not see it? No? Still back?
Like outside with low bandwidth also we can see a little bit, but when you were inside we couldn't see anything. It's difficult to see, Prabhu. Rahul Prabhu.
It's frozen.
Yes.
What
Yeah,
I'm seeing
thank you.
frozen.
Yeah, it's frozen. So thank you anyway, Prabhu. Thank you for your darshan, taking us to Vrindavan for with a wonderful class. That desire taking us to Vrindavan. That is definitely beautiful. Thank you once again, Rahul Prabhu.
All right.
So there is one more question. So Madhav Prabhu, please go ahead and ask question.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful class. Very inspiring. So Prabhu, sometimes we get a motivation to do devotional service because we have a material desire that we want to get rid of. Suppose, like we have a certain anartha that's really pissing us off and we want to, kind of get rid of that. So we really take to devotional service. But then after we see progress, we see that that's kind of out of our system, or you could say it's more or less subdued in our system. Then we slow down in our devotional service because we haven't reached that mindset that I want to do devotional service for the pleasure of Krishna, for Krishna Prema. So what practical steps, what can we do to get that pure desire that I want to do devotional service just for the pleasure of Krishna, not for any material benefit?
Well, I think I don't think you can get there because we're in a body. You can't assess anything. You can't make any move or any commitment without basically thinking what's in it for me. I mean, it's very idealistic, utopian to think that we can act without thinking of our own self-interest. And so when you look around the world and you see devotees that are really committed, there's no way they're gonna get slowed down, they're gonna get stuck, they're gonna get critical, they're gonna get sour. They've got up a head of steam, What's common with them? Okay, sure, we're all trying to serve Krishna. We're all trying to, glorify and honor him. We're all trying to focus on him. But I suggest to you that the devotees who are most fixed up, most steady, and in fact, getting the mercy of Krishna to a higher degree, what do you think I'm going to say? Where do you think I'm going with this? Is it that they have that realization, that Krishna is the greatest and that's the meaning of life? Of course, that's there. That's over above all of us. But what is it that the really fixed up devotees have in common? What do you think?
The desire to obtain that love of God for themselves, I guess.
Okay, some more thoughts? Anybody else? Okay, they have found the particular thumbprint of God on their lives. They have discovered what particular gifts God gave them, and they stepped into the middle of that. Am I wrong? When Krishna says, Karmani vada karishte mafalishu kadachana, Atte sangusto karmani, he's saying, find what you're good at and do it for God. Don't do it for yourself. Do it for God. But first thing is, find what you're good at. It's true, we can do anything for Krishna. And in emergencies and extraordinary circumstances, we're perfectly willing to be flexible and to be adaptable. But for the most part, the fixed up devotees on whose backs this whole movement goes are doing what Krishna created them to do, whether it be cooking or deity worship or lecturing or driving or procuring or organizing festivals or doing kirtan or making flower garlands. The devotees that are really fixed up have discovered Krishna, how Krishna gifted me and what Krishna wants me to do. So there is that sense of self, but it's what Krishna wants myself to be. So I'm saying, you know, everybody should know, everybody should study who Krishna made them to be. Study yourself, study what you like, study what you enjoy, study what you're good at, and then you will discover the thumbprint of God on you. And if it's not that obvious to you, ask your friends. Oftentimes your friends will see things in you that you don't see. And the reason you don't see them is because it comes so easily to you, you don't even think about it. We're all the time thinking, well, I'm weak in this area. I need to practice to play the mridanga better, to cook better, to sing better, to lecture better. I need to do, we're always thinking of where we're weak and where we could get stronger. But our friends, sometimes those who observe us, they see that certain things we're really gifted. We're really talented. We don't even know that half the time. So rather than waste our time trying to be something or somebody we're not, you know, so much of education in the modern world is you try to find an area that you're weak and then you develop that. Why not try this? Find an area that you're strong and then take off, fly like an eagle. You know, trying to work on the areas you're weak. It's like the eagle saying, well, I can fly, I should learn how to run. No, you can fly. So learn to fly better and better and better and better and higher and higher and higher. The eagle doesn't need to learn how to run. Or the rabbit can run, but the rabbit thinks, I think I'd be better if in addition to running, I could learn to climb trees. No, it doesn't matter how long or how much effort the rabbit expends to climb trees. He wasn't created to climb trees. He was created to run. So all of modern education is more or less bent towards finding where you're weak and working in that area. But that's kind of a waste of time. You know, you find your strength and develop that. And then in areas that you're weak, somebody else is strong. So you work together. That's what the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is. Everybody finding their particular strengths and working on those, sharpening those. And then in areas that we're weak, there are others who are strong. So that way we make something extraordinary, something absolutely impenetrable, unbreakable, and unstoppable. Does that make sense?
Yes, Prabhu. You explained it so nicely. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anybody has any other questions or comments? Thank you again, Caru Prabhu, for this wonderful time. It's so much needed and deep wisdom, like, you know, and experience that you're sharing with us. And thank you all the devotees, like, you know, for being with us. Again, you are, Caru Prabhu, you are always like inspiring us, like in every talk, like, you know, Wednesday Sangha we had, it's always moving us. I always feel like, you know, you're putting us one step closer to Krishna, like, hey, you know, you need to step up, you need to step up. And that's one of the topic again today. Like every statement is so deeper, so much to learn, so much to go ahead. And definitely it's not over yet. Like, you know, we have to give up that procrastination disease to get that fruits that what Krishna has to offer. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Always
Caru.
the opportunity.
Love
Thanks.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
There you go. Jai Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.